Welcome to this week's episode of The Grapevine, brought to you by Herdify.com. This week we've got a great brand for you from the UK, that's Mindful Chef, and we've got Arthur Guinness. Arthur, say hi.
Hi everyone. Yes, so I'm Arthur Guinness. I'm the head of acquisition at Mindful Chef. I have about 10 years experience in performance marketing, and since I started my role at Mindful Chef about a year ago now, I've taken on a broader remit beyond performance marketing to cover kind of CRO, SEO, CRM, as well as media above and below the line.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you with us. I think, obviously, as we record, it's the 2nd of February. We've just come out of January, the month where everyone tries to be healthy, drink less, eat better. Also, in the news this week, there's been a few things around food, particularly in the economy, right? That we've, people having to trade down with brands. So, with all of that going on, I thought this would be a really good time for this conversation with you. So, really looking forward to kind of getting stuck in there. Before we dive in, as usual, we're joined by Ed. Ed, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, thank you, Tom. Looking forward to a really interesting conversation, as you say, quite timely as well.
Yeah, cool. So let's jump in. Arthur, I was reading the Mindful Chef sustainability report, and we always, on the listeners will recognise, we wax lyrical about community and word of mouth. And I was really interested. Miles and Giles, who are your founders, they chose to end, and by end that means they're drawing big attention to it, on the power of your community. And I really kind of wanted to sort of get your view on how you see that community aspect of the business and how that fits in with your role of that broad acquisition remit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hugely critical to us. I think it's easy for people in marketing to talk about to talk about community, but for us it's really a driver. So one example, the demographics that we go after acquisition-wise are sort of older than, say, myself and a lot of the team here at Mindful Chef. So we always have to remind ourselves who the customer is and what they look like and happy what sort of circles they're interacting in. But one very obvious example is that they're all on Facebook and they're not on TikTok and Instagram. And well, Instagram, yes, more so, but TikTok absolutely not. We've done surveys of our top. Found that only 4% of our top customers are on TikTok at all, whereas Facebook ranks 8%. So, one example of kind of where we need. How does that translate to community? Well, we have a Facebook group with 30,000 members, and that is really active. We have endless streams of comments and conversation between our community. So people sharing ideas of how they've enjoyed a recipe, and also interacting with our marketing team. So if we do the thing right, for sampling in our boxes, we will then go and ask the community what is cool for those samples and get kind of honest feedback in those Facebook comments. So I think that's an example of how community really can be valuable. There are lots of others, but it's interesting. Facebook, we call it the Mindful Chef community on Facebook, and it's very active. And I think it's an example of it's one of the bigger examples or more widely used examples than other brands out there, and it's kind of a truer demonstration of food.
That's really interesting. I was just wondering how that interacts with your sort of wider customer base. So do you try and get people actively involved in that community? So, point it out to people when they join or in your marketing?
We do, yeah. So part of the onboarding flow is to signpost them towards the Facebook group. Obviously, not all Mindful Chef customers will want to be on that group and or be active on Facebook at all, but a good portion do end up joining and do end up getting involved. Cooking and eating these recipes is something that some people feel is that they want to talk about. So having a community in which they can do so is good. I think what we could do more of is turning social in that way into supercharging it on the referral side of things. We know from the post sign-up surveys that over 45% of our sign-ups come from referral. But we only see about 2% using our referral mechanism. So we know there's huge opportunity to get people referring more often and telling their friends to sign up more often.
So that's a great stat, that people are self-selecting when asked that it's a referral, but actually a referral program on itself is actually only referring 2%. I think linked to that, and the other piece I was really interested in the sustainability report, and we'll make that available as part of this in the links for people who want to have a look. But you talked a lot about their sustainability across the different initiatives, but one that jumped out to me was about healthy people, healthy planet. I don't know if you remember, it's something that we've talked about before, but there was a report a few years back about, do your friends make you fat, right? And really what it was talking about is those near and dear to us, those close to us, influence our behaviours, right? So particularly around health. And this just got me, again, back to this kind of point we're talking around with community. Do you see that community helping you, through that community referral piece and getting more people to be healthier? Do you see community as being kind of integral in helping you achieve your sustainability goals as a business?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of the goals. It's one of the areas that we need to get better at. I think always there's opportunity to get people. Your brand is not what you put down on a piece of paper. It's what people talk about in private or think in their mind of you. It's those private conversations between friends, I think, that is the biggest driver of acquisition for us as a business. So getting people who are our customers to have those conversations is the biggest challenge my team and I have for driving acquisition.
So, and how do you think about that? Like that sounds like a big challenge. I'm intrigued.
Yes.
It's actually quite rare that we hear people thinking like that. So I'm really intrigued. You're obviously deep into that thought. I'd like to expand on that, or you're not. Are you still trying to figure that piece out?
Yeah, definitely still trying to figure it out. Definitely trying to think. I think I'm sure we'll come on to this in more detail, but an example is, it's messaging. An example is the cost of living crisis, related to the cost of living crisis, which I'm sure you're going to have questions about. But it's demonstrating value, and one of the things is the discount code that we give to new subscribers, which is 25% off your first 4 boxes. Now that we've done so much research and testing into what the best level of discount is for driving retention, essentially, or at least lifetime return on ad spend or lifetime return on discount value. And 4-box discount is hugely better than 2-box discount, because getting someone to really commit to the lifestyle by incentivizing them to do so over a longer period of time improves their lifetime retention massively. And therefore we think improves the chances that they're going to talk to their friends about it. I think that's, but it's, definitely haven't figured it out. It's something we need to do for more.
Yeah, it sounds definitely as if you're obviously thinking in a behavioural mindset though, right? You spoke there about changing behaviours, and I guess that's a big thing that you're asking people to do, move away from how they would traditionally, go to the shops. Well, to be fair, I think the online supermarkets have got a job at changing people's behaviour, right? Getting people to change how they buy food. So you've got a behavioural step beyond that. So really interesting to hear that you're thinking about not just incentivising the purchase, but how do we get people to, to change their behaviour.
I think. Sorry, go on, Arthur.
No, you go. I
was going to say, I think it's interesting that you're thinking about it as a behaviour change in particular, like just the change to, a subscription to food box, right? But I did notice on your website, you have a stat that I think it was 2/3 about of your subscribers come from another food box or have tried other food boxes already. Is that something you actively target, or is that just a consequence of their people who have made the change already?
It's a good question. There's also the other part of that question is that just a symptom of the fact that there are two big players in this space, and therefore if someone's coming to us, there's quite a high chance they've tried one of those other two brands. What I would say is we have a very different proposition, and we've kind of held firm on that. Whereas they are both slightly fighting over being the cheapest. So we haven't compromised on the quality or the health credentials. We try to occupy a place in the market that is higher end and healthier. But we're in a difficult space, obviously, with the cost of living crisis and people looking to, as you said earlier, trade down. I would say, so therefore what we're trying to do is really nail down messaging around the value that you get from a My Chef box. What we are not necessarily trying to say is that we're cheap, but we are saying we're good value. And I think that those are the two very different things. I know as a customer it's good value because I've tried it and I've been subscribed and I've been getting a box every week for 9 months. But someone who's never tried us before, the challenge is to get that value, persuade them of the value, and without trying it, that's very difficult.
I mean, I think that's somewhere where as you said already, like your customers are the best people for that, because value is relative almost.
Yeah.
Right. One person's idea of value is not someone else's. So if you can use your current customers to put that in a framing to their friends that is similar to the way that they think about value, then that's kind of a shortcut to having a very diverse set of messaging which explains the difference between value and cheap to the broad audience.
Yeah, exactly. And we have our sort of messaging hierarchy of what we've tested and what we know does drive better conversion rates, for example, on site. And for us, it's health, convenience, and the provenance and quality of the ingredients are probably the top three. But things like sustainability and ethics are maybe less important from a DR perspective. But but we know that those are really important to existing customers. So making sure those messages are landing to existing customers is going to increase the chance of them talking about Mindful Chef to their friends. So the messages that we are landing to our existing customers in order to promote conversations to their friends, it's very different to the messages we're landing to people landing on our site, for example, who are prospective customers.
I guess that, there's going to be a bunch of people that will stop using the service, not because they want to, because they can't afford to, right? The benefit of what you're talking about there is it helps keep your brand top of mind, right? So when we come out of this in, 12, 18 months and, they've got more money to spend on items, you're back at you've maintained presence in their head, even though they haven't been paying you. So, you're one of the first things that they turn back on, harnessed by your community, I guess. Is that how you think about it?
It is. And I mean, as a customer myself, I find myself spending a lot less money as a MyChef customer than I would. So, and that's another piece of value that is very hard to explain. For example, I get 1 fewer deliveries a week or 2 fewer deliveries a week, which are now, the cost of living is, if it's hit one area, it's definitely the cost of a Deliveroo, which seems to be about 50 quid a go for 2 days. So if you think of that, I'm saving, 100 quid a week almost on delivery. And there are other areas that it's indirectly saving money. And I think this is the recipe box as a whole. It's saving money as a whole indirectly, not just versus a supermarket shop, And those indirect cost savings are very hard to explain in a piece of creative, you know.
It's a brilliant example though, because you are a customer, so you won't be the only customer that's picked up on that, right? So you can almost imagine that conversation with some mates, like, oh, I'm not, what you doing for dinner on a Friday night? Well, I'm not getting a delivery because it's 50 quid up. I'm getting this instead, and you can. It probably, as you've intimated there, it's not the sort of creativity that goes with your brand. Switch from Deliveroo to us.
Yeah,
but your community is kind of having those conversations, which I think is fascinating.
Absolutely.
Fascinating.
And at that point around those, it's for these sorts of things that might go into casual conversation would look terrible in an ad. They would, if you put that into a piece of paid social advertising, or it's very hard to make it look like a high-end food brand ad. Well, you wouldn't see Waitrose doing that, with what I mean. Having really effective D2C paid media, but also playing into those kind of spaces that we were just talking about is a challenge.
Yeah. So I thought Ed might go. I saw his mouth moving. Just, I guess, opening it up a little bit. Like you opened up and said you've moved from the performance world, solely in performance, to acquisition. How much does performance make up of your acquisition work, and what are the other core channels that you're working across? And then the final part of a 3-part question, which is terrible interview etiquette, is, I guess, how do you measure which is working across those different ones?
So we performance marketing is a large chunk of our budget. The next biggest area of investment is above the line media. So for us, that's TV, podcasts. And the reason we do podcasts is that the host reads feel really natural, and we send a book out, and they land really well. And then we do a bit of out of home and a bit of VOD and YouTube and things like that as well. So that whole above the line section is sizable, but performance marketing, Meta and Google primarily are big for us. And then beyond that, we spend a lot of time and energy on CRO, and that's hugely important for us because obviously it's affecting every channel and it's impacting performance across the board. And then CRM is obviously an ever growing space for us. So in the context of kind of driving profitable growth, which I think lots of different companies are talking about these days, we are looking to diversify our channel mix, especially into areas that we think can drive scalable performance, like CRM, like partnerships. So there's quite a few partnerships that we've done. You may have seen our partnership with Vitality Health Insurance, which it has been a really successful one. I think partnerships is one that if you do it right, I think it can be hugely. I think they can deliver more than the sum of their parts if they're natural. What you don't want is to go too far down this road, and in fashion, I think we've kind of gone past this peach collab, and there's probably some quite natural smashing together of brands in that space. But if you do it naturally and you have a good crossover of audience, I think partnerships is scalable and very efficient.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, especially you see it in a lot of brands when, well, it goes back to the community, right? When those communities overlap, there's a natural benefit to both brands, right? Because, you'll have customers that use Vitality and you, and then all of a sudden there's cross-pollination between two communities, as opposed to, when the communities have no overlap, it makes a big headline, but actually the long-term gain, I think, is less quantifiable. And how do you kind of measure across it? You're doing a lot effectively. There's a lot of activity, and you as someone who heads up acquisition, like how do you measure what's working for you from an acquisition point of view particularly?
So my predecessor is very interested in on the topic of attribution. It's called Frankie Outhill, and he set up various models internally that we still look at and use.
Right.
I'd say my view on attribution is that we should never have a single source of truth, because by the very nature of one setup, they will have various assumptions or ways of being set up that will never be 100% correct. As you scale performance channels, there are data-driven attribution models that will get close to, having a good stab at attributing value correctly. But my view is that you should always have multiple ones that you can compare and contrast in different contexts, which is a very difficult internal communications challenge when dealing with different stakeholders. But ultimately, I think gets you better results. So yeah, we have multiple ones.
Okay.
We have media mix modeling that we do once a year only, but it's hugely valuable, and we have our code attributions, we have our last click attributions through our Google Analytics. We have a couple of other models that we use, and then we build our own layers on top of that to build a few different reports.
Cool. And that number you talked about earlier, that 45% come from referral when it was the post sign up survey, right?
Sorry, yeah, that's another one. So the post sign up bit.
Oh, yeah. I'm intrigued whether you can see that in the other channels, if that makes sense, in terms of like how you join those two things together. People are talking about how they found you and what the rest of the models are saying.
So we don't join it together, but it is just a separate reference.
Okay.
But yeah, that one, my boss, the CMO, Giles, and founder, he looks at that one as being the most accurate, which I think is fair because it's what a customer was.
Yeah.
I think it's I agree. I think it's probably the most valuable one we have, and as we know from hearing what other brands in this space say, it's similar, that referral is the biggest driver of acquisition.
Do you notice anything different about the quality of those customers? So the ones that self-select as coming from a referral, do they have a higher LTV, or do they stay around for longer, or I don't know, are there any sort of value attributes that you can see when you look at those customers versus non-referral customers?
So they're because they make up such a large portion, they're quite well they're quite close to the sort of averages.
Okay.
So they're not wildly different from the average kind of lifetime value or retention rates. What is interesting is in the past, when we've tested more generous incentives, we've seen early life cycle retention drop drastically. So there is we have to be careful about giving customers too much incentive to refer, because what they might do is refer quite poor customers who are going to discount it and then never again. What I think what would be a really nice way of doing it would be to build in, as you might do with a sales team, for example, build in some retention incentive into the referral program, but that gets a lot more complicated.
Okay. Here's your discount if when they order their 6th box type thing.
Yeah, exactly. It probably gets a bit too complicated for a referral program, but I think loyalty program, incentives, and linked with referral program is definitely the next step and something that we want to kind of build on.
Yeah, okay.
I was just interested. Do you find there are do you have sort of super referrers, you might call them, so people who refer a lot more than others within your referral program, or is it
we do, yeah,
kind of more natural? Yeah,
we do, and as yet we haven't sort of that. Again, I think there's opportunity here for us to get better at, we talked about community earlier. One of the things we do is we get our customers into our office and we talk to them and we test recipes with them and they meet our founders and they love it, and they give us good qualitative data on our recipes as they test them in a live environment. But I think probably what we could do better at is get them to bring their friends and then sign their friends up, or talk to them about the referral programs and get those customers who are really engaged because they're so engaged that they come to our office and test our recipes. Get those ones, turn them into super referrers, because there are plenty of them. I think there's a lot of demand for those sorts of days that we do here at the office in our studio.
You also use you've used your customers in ads as well. Is that right?
Yes. So we put out some comms to say that we would would love to get some UGC style videos of them in their kitchens, maybe cooking or maybe just talking about MyFreshF, and we gave kind of credit to anyone that sent in videos, and we turned those into ads for paid social, which did perform quite well because they're real people, they're real testimonials.
Just as you were saying, I was thinking about that. Did you do any testing with showing those ads in the communities they lived? So we said where I live. If I send you guys a video, you kind of put it in my area and say, here's Tom who lives in your town. And target that ad to users in our town. Did you do any testing like that? It'd be a fascinating experiment.
We didn't get as clever as that. It's a good shout though. I think we could. So our approach, January, which we just come through, was our highest spending period for acquisition, and we're using very broad targeting for our paid social as Meta kind of pushes you towards these days in order to be able to using their systems. So we didn't do any really granular targeting on with our paid social, but I feel like that could work.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just around. I thought it'd be quite cool to. Although I'm sure if my mates saw me advertising the box, they just don't like me, so they probably wouldn't buy. But for most people, they would, they'd probably get something out of it. Okay, cool. That makes sense.
It's like a sort of supercharged world. It's like putting you into all your putting a video of you into all your friends' phones through their Instagram would be quite terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we always sort of seem sometimes joke about it, but semi-seriously that everyone likes to put referrals on website. Social proof is a really big thing, and we know social proof works, but we actually associate with people who have more things in common with us. So actually, if you can land on a website, now there's some compliance issues here, but theoretically, at least, if you can land on a website and all your mates were there, or people you knew, or people in your town, or people in your your rugby club, whatever it might be, you've got social proof kind of turned up to 11 because you kind of resonate. It's not just people who are talking about it, it's people who you closely identify and relate to, which is why I made that. I was like, actually, getting UCG content delivered in the town would be an interesting thought experiment. So
for sure.
Okay, cool. Makes a lot of sense. Good stuff. I think from my side, I've asked everything I wanted to ask. Ed, anything else from your side?
No, I mean, that was fascinating. I was just to pick up on that point at the end there. I think it's Yotpo now. They're one of the review platforms. I think it's Yotpo. They'll deliver reviews by IP location.
Oh, okay.
I assume they use IP.
You're right.
Or maybe you have to sign in. But they do deliver like location-based reviews. So it's like, Dave from Bristol said this about this product to try and kind of connect people more with that review. And also like there's lots of social reasons that this works really well, especially if you can harness or you find an area which people really associate with, then they naturally associate with the other people in that area, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of consider themselves more similar to them. So it's like, oh, that might fit into my lifestyle as well.
It's something that I know that some e-com and subscription brands do in this space is when you're signing up, they say you're joining, let's say I'm signing up from Kensal Rise, and it will say you'll be joining 500 other people that use this service in Kensal Rise. It sort of shows it, even if that number 500 is completely made up, but I think it's been shown to drive conversion rate, and so people like to see, that people in their geographic area are using the product, which seems to be quite arbitrary, but that drives.
Yeah, it kind of. I think it helps with that sort of would it work for me?
Yeah.
Side, and particularly of the behavioural change, right? Is it gonna save me money? Is it gonna be something that I'm gonna get value out of?
Yeah.
I guess just I think there's been a fascinating conversation that's gone many different ways. I think the big takeaway for a lot of me, a lot of my takeaway there was around how powerful community can be, and I think what I really liked at the beginning is how you hit head on. I think the word community is massively overused, but I think how you talked about it, but not just from an acquisition point of view. The fact that as I say, we'll link to this your sustainability report, that how that's going to just help your business, not just be a profitable and successful business, but how it's going to help give back to the environment effectively, which I think for something that I do think the word is overused, it just does show how super powerful they are. So yeah, it's super cool conversation. Thank you. As people will know, as we end, we just have a little bit of a light-hearted recommendations. We talk about word of mouth a lot, so I'm going to kick off, and I'm going to go with a TV show this week, and it's more because we've been joking a lot with mates just around how hard it is to find anything decent on all the various streaming services anymore. So I've gone back to the old school shows. I'm rewatching Sopranos, and I've forgotten how good it is. So for those that you either haven't watched it or haven't watched it in a long time, it is 20 years old now. Sopranos is going to be my recommendation for the episode. So enjoy. Ed, let's let you go up next.
Okay, I'm going to start by apologising for also recommending a TV show. I'm going to tell listeners this wasn't prep.
Yes.
But I'm going to recommend a TV show that I really enjoyed when it was first on 20 years ago. And it's one of the few things you've not been able to see anywhere until recently. And it's just got a new run. It's back on BBC 4 and it's on iPlayer. And it's called Early Doors. It's a comedy set up in Manchester. It's written by some of the same people that wrote The Royal Family. So it's that sort of vibe.
Nice. Okay. Here we go. Early Doors. I don't know. There's a good coincidence there that they're both about 20 years old. But Arthur, got any 20-year-old TV shows, or are you going to break, or you got something else?
Well, I'll break from the precedent you guys have set, and I'm going to suggest that your listeners try a alcohol-free beer that is delicious, and I've been drinking it through January, and it's called Freestar. It's founded by a friend of mine, and genuinely, I believe it is the most delicious alcohol-free beer out there.
Awesome. How do we get hold of that? Is it direct?
Yeah.
Direct on if we. Okay.
It's in the supermarkets. And they do direct to consumer. So their website's freestar.co.
Cool. Well, there's 2 great TV shows and some alcohol-free beer to drink while you're watching them. So cool. Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll call it an end there. As usual, we'll be back in 2 weeks. If you thought this episode was useful, like and subscribe. Also, if you've got any, e-commerce direct-to-consumer marketers out there who you think would benefit from a lot of this knowledge, share, pass it on. And we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.